Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Hi.
Happy Friday, Friday Night
Hello,
Live.
hello.
I think I'm going to get sued for calling it Friday Night Live, but what are you going to do? Our special guest,
What do you?
and I love this man. He could be my brother. If I lived next door to this man, he'd be putting extra locks on the door because I come to see him every day. Steve Porcaro,
Probably.
welcome to the show.
Hey, John and Shannon.
Well,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, listen. Have you been productive during this COVID-19 thing?
I've been incredibly productive. This was kind of what I was planning to do all along, and it's really not much different than how I live anyway when I'm home. And so now I have a legitimate excuse. But I've been in the studio as much as possible.
Well, good. Hold on. We're just checking our feed, making sure we're good, because like we told you. Hold on. I think I can give you this. Sorry, we're losing our comments here. Hold on. There, you can.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, sorry about that, Steve. So
No worries.
listen, before people ask you the obvious question, and we're going to get it out of the way, because you know they're going to be asked 40,000 times on this show. Is Toto still a band?
According to Luke, I guess it isn't. I think I've heard it's been said that it's finished, but I think if everyone just kind of looks at the history of the band has ended 3 or 4 times, and at least, or it's always managed to exist again. So I don't know. I have hope it's going to come back.
And you had mentioned to me before, Steve, that you were maybe not as big on these great big stadium tours, but you like the smaller venues things. You'd like to be involved in on that level, right? Or is it okay now for both?
You mean with the band?
Yeah, with the band.
I'm kind of done touring. I'm hoping I'm done touring. I've had a great time. Luke asked me to jump in there back when my brother Mike was sick to do like one summer of a tour, and it wound up being 10 years. And I've had a amazing time. It's been great, and Luke and the band have been amazing to me. I'm just kind of I want to be in my studio. That's my instrument. That's where I do my thing. I have a blast on the road. I love playing live. I love playing, the Toto stuff and getting those songs back up, and taking bows for all that work we did all those years ago and stuff. It's been amazing, but I need to be in my studio. It's been 10 years where since I've really been here, and I'm forgetting my key commands, and I'm losing some of that stuff that's part of my music making machine. And that's kind of what I'm all about at this point in my life. I mean, I'll never say never as far as touring again. And I definitely think and hope that Luke puts, some form of Toto back together again at some point. It's his thing. It's amazing the way he does it. And, I really hope they put it together again someday.
Yeah. Yeah. Shannon's got some questions for you.
Sure.
I do. Is there a possibility you could do smaller tours as a band with a different name? Perhaps just the 4 main members and the recent touring members?
Sure, anything's possible. I, for me personally, it's not about all these lawsuits and stuff like you may be hearing. And that may be the problem with some of the other guys, but it's not about it for me. It was funny. All I'll say is that, we saw Jethro Tull in Europe last year, and it was Ian Anderson's Jethro Tull. I remember it being billed that way. And I remember thinking, when was it anyone other than Ian Anderson's Jethro Tull? Look at ELO now. Okay. It's Jeff Lynne's ELO. When was it anything other than Jeff Lynne's ELO? He's been the only lead singer. He's written every song they've ever done. I think some of this stuff happens because of old band members, old ex-wives, heirs, whatever. But a lot of these guys started off as bands. But to clear away any BS, they've named these things with their name in them. I really wish, to answer that question, that Luke would come out and call it Steve Lukather's Toto, Mm-hmm. And that would end all of that BS, all of that stuff. That's all that has to happen. And he can do whatever the hell he wants to do.
But and maybe you can't talk about this. This is about the name, though, right? This is there was as far as you know.
It is. It is about the name.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? As far as the details go, I really don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. But it is about the name, and it's solved by just doing that.
Yeah, that's
You know?
easy. Shan?
I've got a ton of questions here. Steve, I love your work with Toto. I am a huge fan, especially the Hydra album. A lot of prog and heavy songs. How much fun was that to play, and did you influence the sound?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. That's kind of where we're all heading as far as the heaviness goes. I sure would like to think that the prog thing was a little bit having to do with me. Yeah, and I like to talk about that real quick because I've always been, as far as I don't know, I just have always liked to think of that we kind of lean that way, not in a fusion kind of way, which is where the band kind of went later on. It was kind of going more in what I would call fusion as opposed to prog, which was always my leanings.
Shan?
But Hydra was a blast to work on, and I had a lot of fun. That's when I first got my Polyfusion modular system, and there was lots of experimenting going on.
Nice to hear you talk about ELO. Have you ever had the pleasure of working with Jeff Lynne or Richard Tandy?
No, but I'd love to. Richard was the keyboard player, I guess, for all those glory years, and I'm a huge fan of Jeff Lynne's. I met him at Gary Wright's house once at a birthday party. Just met him very briefly.
Are you still in contact with Gary Wright at all?
I sure am. Gary's a good friend. Gary's we've stayed in touch all these years. We try to get together and have a bite every now and then. I love Gary to death. He gave me my first job when I was 17, and he's the best. You know?
Cool.
Okay, there was so much great music from the first album and still now. Did you guys ever know each other or play with each other prior to forming the band?
Yeah, we were a high school band, actually. Toto was kind of very much a garage band in the Valley. And there were kind of two iterations of the band. First with my brother Jeff and David Page and friends from high school. And then kind of as Jeff graduated, I entered high school and actually took over the same band, did the same songs at first. Did the same, had the same horn section and not the same players, but it was the next generation. But then I kind of made it my own, and we lost the horns after a couple of years. And I had Lukather and Landau on guitar, and Carlos Vega on drums, John Pierce on bass. We had a blast.
Okay. Hey, Steve, from one keyboard geek to another, what did your rig consist of when touring with Toto?
Say again?
So what did your
my rig
consist of when touring with Toto?
Yeah, with Toto these days, we had to be a lean machine. Mm-hmm. And, I felt like kind of in the 80s, I'd, seen my Keith Emerson wet dream come true with all the keyboards in the world and the modular banks and zillions of keyboards. We traveled with our own 9-foot grand piano. We traveled with 2 CS80s. I'd kind of done that. So when I started touring again, I realized this piece of software that came with Logic, the software that I use in the studio, this thing called Mainstage, which was kind of set up for live performance, to use a minimal amount of keyboards and have it access all these plugins and soft synths and stuff. And it seemed like the way to go for me. And I know a lot of purists, they go, come on, you're Steve Porcaro, you got to have the real synths there. I'm like, I want it to work and I want it to be consistent every night. And that's what Mainstage did for me. So my keyboard rig was mostly consisted of 2 computers, but I use Yamaha keyboards at front to play them, to play the software that's in these computers.
Plus you've done it old school. I mean, you did it.
Yeah, we did that. And yeah.
I met Mr. Porcaro at Town Hall in New York City a few years ago. He was a very nice, fan-friendly gentleman. He signed all of my LPs and shook my hand. What a very human being he is. A little compliment to you there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate your work. Can we talk tour memories? Do you remember the kid who told Joseph Williams his hair reminds him of Chick-fil-A?
Chick-fil-A? I don't know. That's misspelled.
Chick-fil-A is a fast food chain.
Yeah.
I don't know what that. I don't know what the question's about.
I don't think there's an answer to
that. I don't
that.
understand. Next.
Your father was a huge talent, which obviously he passed along. Any particular musical lesson he taught you that you still use today?
Steve, before you answer that, how's your dad doing? Is he in good health? Is he doing okay?
Doing great. He's doing great. He's actually been having some tests and stuff lately, but we're so far so good. He just turned 90 just a couple weeks ago, and he's doing fantastic.
You were mentioning when we talked last time that people sometimes think that it was like a great Santini. It was your words, not mine. Situation, but in your house, considering what came out of your house, including what your dad did, but it wasn't like that at all, was it?
Not at all. Not at all. They knew the dangers. He knew very well the dangers of the music business and of trying to make it in town, and how hard it was and how high the bar was as far as doing studio work. They would have been thrilled, I think, if we did something else. But as far as to answer the question, the most important thing I think he always gave us was it was always about time and laying back and being in the pocket and especially when we were growing up, his favorite, he's listening to Miles Davis and Tony Williams and admiring drummers who could really swing, and I think he just really kind of impressed that on all of us.
Is there another album coming for you?
Oh, absolutely. There's going to be a whole lot of them. I'm just kind of slow at it. A lot of people I think have trouble coming up with material for another album. I have just the opposite problem. I kind of have what I think is an embarrassment of riches, if you like Steve Porcaro music, and I'm dying to get it out to you. That's why I want to be home. That's why I have to be home. Is I have all these great tools here to get it out and to get it to you, and I just need to focus and focus on that, which is what I love doing, is focusing on my stuff and finishing it.
Our autistic daughter taught us something, which is, and I didn't realize I had this problem, and maybe you can relate to it, but I realized that switching files for me is very difficult. Like if I'm distracted from writing a story or doing a video, I learned from her that, it's hard for me to do all this stuff over here. I just want to concentrate over here. Did you ever find touring, as much as you liked it, was that a distraction for you in some ways as far as being...
Always. It was, especially in the old days, it was horrible because to make everything talk to each other in those days, and even talking pre-MIDI, everything was all these customized black boxes I would have guys make for me. So an ARP would talk to a Moog. You know what I mean? There was just all this kind of very boutique-y, customized, fussy stuff that wasn't necessarily part of my road rig. You know what I mean? But a lot of my other keyboards were. But, every year when I came time to tour, they would come busting in the studio and just yank everything apart, and there would be my setup in what was left of it anyway, in a pile, and it was very difficult changing gears, but it was the life. And I did love touring live, and I did love getting ready for live performance. But it was jarring sometimes.
What do people ask you about the most? Is it one of those human nature things? When people come up to you, if you're at a party or at a get together, there must be a common denominator, people that ask you this one question. Is there any one thing
that people ask me?
Yeah.
Not really. It's usually, about Africa or something.
Isn't that amazing? That song, when you look at it in Spotify, for instance, you're going, there's so many other songs, but that's how the beast works. The beast works. One song catches on. It's like Don't Stop Believing. That's your Don't Stop Believing.
All of us, especially us musos, it's hard to admit sometimes, but the bottom line, the reason why people are in the record business is to make money, and the way you make money is hit records. You know what I mean? We may fall in love with our deep cuts and our B-sides and, real cool stuff, but at the end of the day, what drives the machine, if you want to have that record company behind you and distributing like that, believe me, they have a very short tolerance for when you don't deliver those hits, So it's just, you got to try to do both. That's the trick.
I know a gentleman that you've worked with for a long time and known for a long time, Michael Sherwood. We lost him a little while ago. That must have come as a complete shock.
Absolutely. It's completely devastating. And then I just lost another co-writer, Allie Willis, just
Right.
before that. So it was kind of a double whammy. I was really looking forward to working with both of them as we speak. This was a big part of my plan as far as how I spent this year. And
I actually I communicate. I think on Twitter I told, or it might have been what's the other one? Instagram. I contacted her because we were always going to talk. I think I told you that when last time we talked. And I said, by the way, Steve Porcaro is saying really nice things about you coming up next week, and we lost her that week. And she said, oh, I can't wait to hear it. And she was such a, as you know, I mean, you knew her, I didn't know her, this larger than life figure, including her house, that really demonstrated who she was.
Loved it. I loved her. I just, it was just a couple of years ago. Greg Sill, a friend of mine, introduced us, and boy, we just hit it off right away.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
I've got a ton of questions. Steve, which comes first when writing a song, the melody or the lyrics? For you?
Neither. For me, most of the time, it starts with the chord changes. For me, a lot of times. This was typically how it was. If I got those chord changes right, and if those chord changes moved me and I thought they were hip and I was kind of having a groove, then the melody would be very easy. You know what I mean? Once the chord changes are right, the chord changes would inspire the melody. And then the lyrics, you just hang the lyrics on the melody. That's the way I kind of work. I just had an experience. The last song I finished with a guy sent me a lyric, which I had never worked that way before, called The COVID Kid. And the lyric was completely finished. And this was a guy who wasn't, just started songwriting recently. But he was a writer and asked me if I would write to it. And that's never worked for me in my life. So I was really dreading even trying, to be honest with you. But I kind of gave in to the lyric. Instead of trying to make the lyric fit my melody, I kind of said, what would the melody, even if it was changing all the time, what serves the lyric? And I was able to get through it. It was great. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about working that way with people now.
And with Billy Sherwood on vocals, which was cool.
Yeah, and Billy Sherwood on vocal. That would have been a typical thing that Mike would have done.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That kind of Steely Dan thing would have been right up Mike Sherwood's alley. He would have been right there with me. And I really missed him while I was working on it.
Oh, no kidding. Speaking of Billy, you'd worked with Yes. That experience, was it, I mean, being a big Yes fan, you and I've talked in depth about the fact that when you first heard those songs and you were humming them and you went to that record store and you wanted to know what that, I don't know if it was Yours Is No Disgrace. I forget what it was.
No, it was much earlier. That was from the Yes album. That was Your Move.
Oh, yeah. So what was that? How did that come about? You get a call? I mean.
Yeah, that came about by a friend of mine, Rory Kaplan, who had done some synths live with Michael Jackson, and we were friends from high school. He got called by a producer, Jonathan Elias, who was working with Yes at the time. Now, besides John Anderson, I don't think anyone else in the band was happy about it, about this producer. And I worked on two things. It was a rough experience for me. Again, it was right. I'm working with Yes, so I'm thrilled about it. But the producer and I didn't hit it off at all, which is a really strange thing for me to say because I'm real good at getting along with producers. But it just didn't come out. And then to hear Rick Wakeman and these guys, my heroes, I mean, they won't even listen to that album because they, you know what I mean? The fact they brought in LA studio guys like me is just abhorrent to them, and I kind of don't blame them. I did do some cool stuff though,
Okay, I'm going to get back to some questions here.
Sure.
Steve, as a drummer, I know how you felt about Jeff and Simon and others. But other than those two, who is a drummer that you would like to work with that you have not worked with yet?
God, there's a million. There's a million great guys out there. Manu, I've never worked with Steve Gadd. I've worked with Keltner, but I mean, the list goes on and on. There's a million guys. Vinny and I are old friends, but I don't think we've ever actually worked together. Vinny was, I'd be there at the Baked Potato watching Vinny with all my friends playing, but like him and I have never worked together. I'd love to work with Vinny. So I could go on and on.
Steve, can you talk about your song To No One from your solo album? I just love that song.
Great. There's not much I can say. It started off out as just a piano thing, as a very lonely sounding sad sounding piano thing. And the Beatles had a song, For No One, that I was always a huge fan of. I love, that title. That's not where I had it. It just kind of came out naturally, that lyric,
And you don't have a timeline for the album, right? It's basically.
I don't have a timeline. The guys from Inside Music Cast last time, the ones that they made me set a deadline for myself. No, I was able to. The only way I get anything done, I don't know about any of you out there, but I found the only way anything gets done is with a deadline. And being in Toto was very bad for that. It was, I didn't learn any kind of discipline being in Toto, but writing for film, writing for TV, you learn, you know what I mean? You have to deliver. A deadline is just amazing what it does for me. And that's why when I was touring with the band, I had to put a deadline on myself because we were leaving for tour. And I definitely wanted to get that album out once and for all. Yeah. So I haven't done that to myself yet, but I will soon, I'm just I'm still basking in being home and being present and being with my family and dealing with all this stuff all of us have been having to deal with. But I'm also working away. Chipping away.
Okay, so here's a good one. On the road, Steve, where was your favorite restaurant to eat?
Have you ever had that question before?
Not really. Probably in New York at Cafe dell'Arte.
Okay.
It's this Italian restaurant we've been going to. It's right across from Carnegie Hall.
Good company, yeah.
Is there a particular band you enjoyed touring with back in the day?
Yes. I mean, I first of all, when I was with Gary Wright, it was amazing, the people we got to travel with. Gary was with this manager, D. Anthony, who handled Peter Frampton as he was peaking with Frampton Comes Alive. And we would get on these tours. We opened for Jethro Tull for a month once. And I mean, I watched Jethro Tull every night. I didn't miss a show. All kinds of bands. We were all over the place. I mean, from stadiums to opening for Gentle Giant in a small theater in Milwaukee, which blew me away because I was such a huge fan.
Derek Shulman, what a singer.
That whole band.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. So yeah, we got to do all kinds of stuff. We'd open for Hall & Oates where they were just doing college stuff. It was all over the place. So it was great. And same with Toto at first. Right away we did a stadium thing at the LA Coliseum with Van Halen and all these other bands. And it's always fun. It's always great to, just this last summer, like I said, we were on the bill with Procol Harum. We're on the bill with Jethro Tull in Europe. These are our heroes and stuff. And these guys are killing it.
Would you ever write a book?
Would I ever write a book?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so.
I bet you could write a hell of a book, though.
Yeah. I maybe could. When I'm put on the spot, maybe, what I like to do is kind of just get my life in chronological order at somewhere. Yeah. When I'm put on the spot, everyone always wants to hear some wacky road story or some outrageous road stories. And a lot of musicians have a lot of them. I don't have that many, or I don't remember them, or when I'm put on the spot, I sure don't remember. Yeah. But maybe someday, who knows?
There you go.
Someone asked, please share a favorite memory of Jeff and Mike.
Of Jeff and Mike?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you start?
Yeah, one I like to tell that's Toto related, and I'm sorry if you've heard this before, but Jeff and I Mike was the middle brother, and believe me, he was the middle brother, and Jeff and I kind of bumped heads quite a bit, especially when we were in the band together in terms of technology, and I'm being very much into it, and Jeff is all about groove and feel and hates that stuff, hates click tracks and the stiffness, and so we really bumped heads a lot in the band about that. And I was going to do the Song of Mine, Leah, on the Fahrenheit album. And the demo I had done with just a drum machine loop. And we had talked about, the guys wanted to do the song, and they talked about how we would do it. And Jeff said, I think we should do like an acoustic loop, like, using a 24-track tape, make a loop like they did on Africa, which is very time-consuming and labor intensive. And anyway, I just remember one morning waking up and it was pouring rain. I love it when it rains, by the way. And it was Jeff on the phone saying, it looks like a great day to make a loop. And I went over to his studio, which is just a block away from where I am right now. And he had called up Steve Jordan. He called up Jim Keltner. He called up Lenny Castro. And, of course, my brother Mike and Luke and Paige were there. And he got all these drummers in a semicircle in his studio. And they made these loops for my song Leah. And it just was an amazing moment where kind of technology and groove kind of met in the middle there. It was a very cool moment for us.
Wow. I find that with Fahrenheit, that for me personally, Fahrenheit album was the beginning of, it was, I don't know, the seventh one to me, it fell together. That's the kind of the Toto that I really, really enjoyed. But I kept changing my mind. You know, like for instance, I wasn't a big fan of Turn Back when it came out, and now it's one of my favorite albums. It's strange how that happens, right?
Yep, sure.
Because sometimes when you fall in love too fast, it doesn't work, but then, you know.
I'm telling you, John.
You got some questions?
Okay. If you were stuck on an island and you could only have one Toto record, which one would it be?
I don't know, only one Toto record.
We're putting you on an island, young man.
Yep.
Greatest hits?
Greatest hits.
There you go. That's the present.
Oh, that's perfect.
Actually, not the old one.
Yeah. You got.
Sorry. Do you spend any time listening to music? And if so, what do you like? What are some of your favorites?
I try to listen to music all the time, and I try to listen to new music. I mean, it's easy to listen to top 40 stuff is very hard for guys at my age. Some of it, but every now and then, I'm always on the look for something I like. I'm rooting for it. I love too on alt. There's these alt stations on Sirius and stuff like that. Alt radio.
Yeah.
And I love that stuff. There's all kinds of amazing synth stuff. Yeah, I love bands like Muse that use a lot of synths, and I'm going to date myself with some of these bands, but I love a lot of new stuff that's out there. I think there's a lot of great stuff out there. Yeah, I was kind of hoping my record would get on some of those stations or something, but I may have aged out.
That's the problem. I was asked the other day when I was doing a thing in my backyard, they go, why doesn't classic rock play new music from those classic rock artists? And I went, because they don't, that's canceled out because of the fact of they don't want to play the new stuff. They have a station that only plays the old stuff. And unfortunately, even classic rock now is changing because classic rock's becoming very classic poppy. But it is what it is, right? By the way, did you with Ian Anderson? Did you ever get to know him at all?
I didn't. Luke, I didn't. Back in the day in 1975 when we were opening for him, when Gary Wright was, he was just this. I had heard from the crew that he only listened to his own music or something like that. He was kind of this mystical figure, even on the road. But Luke somehow connected with him, and I think he played on something of Toto's at one time or another. Luke got him to do an overdub on something in his own studio, I believe, on something. I think it was Toto related, if not Toto. But I've never really, we said hello backstage, of course, at the last thing. But yeah, he was a lot more.
He's an eccentric. He's a very interesting man. I've interviewed him twice. And he's probably one of the most interesting people that I've ever talked to in my entire life. But I will never be able to figure that man out in a million years.
Yeah,
and rightly
he's
so.
Funny, especially around guys like us, because he's glad to play for anybody, but he refuses to charge a nickel. You know what I mean? Because then you might tell him what to do. He just does what he does, and that's it. And he doesn't charge for it, and you know what I mean?
Yes.
And he kind of almost feels sometimes like he would look down on people that do, which is what we do for a living. Is charge people to play on their records. You know what I mean?
I've got another question for you. How did A Secret Love from Turn Back come together?
Boy, I remember that really well.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it real well. I was living at a friend's house. I had just gotten my modular synthesizers. I was like camped out. It was the first time I was living at a studio, when I'd gotten my modular stuff, and I was wanting to come up with something for the album and really didn't have anything. And this guy had this friend whose house I was living at had this real horrible piano, and I wrote the piano part, the beginning of Secret Love, and it felt like half a song. It was just this 2.5-minute thing, but I just loved it as a piece. In those days, this may sound real crazy, but we were just off a hit record and we could do whatever we want. And I knew of this place in Larchmont in LA that had real harpsichords, had really take care of harpsichords and clavichords and Mozart pianos. And I rented these things to studios, to film studios. And I called him up and had him bring everything to Sunset Sound. We set up a celeste, a real harpsichord, a real clavichord, like from the time of Bach. Anyway, I did the initial track like that. That weird piano sound at the beginning of our piano. It's a very unique, different piano that was kind of from the way of Mozart and stuff. And from there, most of the overdubs then happened at Reggie Fisher's studio where I was living at the time. And I did all the rest of the tape loops, all the synths. Reggie had a Chamberlain. I did all kinds of keyboard overdubs with that. David Paich worked with me a lot. My dad came in at the very end. My dad came in and he had these crotales, which are just these metal discs done up like an octave, and you can hear them. I made this separate tape loop that we fade in at the end of Secret Love. And my dad's in there playing crotales. You can hear them real clear. They're these kind of bell-like things that go through. Anyway, I was completely indulging myself in that, yes. So that's the story of Secret Love.
Thank you.
How did you come up with the idea for the song Human Nature?
I've well documented it on this last tour. It was I was thinking about my daughter who had had a rough day at school. And the idea of Human Nature came into my head, and I went into the studio and pretty much wrote the whole song, you know what I mean, in the studio while the guys were mixing Africa.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, so
yeah. They were mixing out, they put up the mix to Africa, and I went into the studio where no one was and wrote Human Nature.
Wow. I didn't know that part of it.
Yeah.
Greatness. That's a lot of greatness going on in one building, man.
It's a busy, fruitful time.
Yeah, no kidding, eh? Shan?
Yeah.
Steve, are you using all soft synths or some hardware synths?
I love to use hard synths. As a matter of fact, there's some I'm looking forward to getting. Polyfusion, as a matter of fact, is making a new keyboard hardware synth. I love that stuff, but for a lot of the film work I do, and because I jump around so much from song to song, I'll go and work on something. I do use a lot of soft synths because it just comes back up. When I open the sequence where I left off, it comes back up for the most part. Now, when it gets down to the actual recording, when I'm actually doing it for real and it's going to be the record, I'll pull out a CS80. I'll pull out some hard synths. I'll pull out the Polyfusion stuff, which is being completely rebuilt right now, by the way. Then I'll do all that. But for convenience and just jumping from song to song, or when I'm doing film, cue to cue, soft synths are amazing for that, to be able to move around quick.
Were you a fan of Rod Argent, for instance? When I mentioned to Shem that I was going to interview him, he just went crazy. So one day I called Shem up and I said, Shem, why don't you interview Rod Argent with me?
Oh, you're kidding.
He liked the Circus album so much from Argent. And I wasn't that familiar with it. I heard it maybe twice. So he interviewed Rod Argent with me. Were you a fan of his?
Huge. I mean, to be honest with you, Hold Your Head Up was just, as far as a keyboard player goes and a Hammond sound goes, it was the shit,
Yeah.
It's amazing.
You got some shit?
Amazing record.
How did you guys come up with the Weezer song Hash Pipe as a cover?
I had thought Luke was off. What was Luke off doing? He was off doing a Ringo thing. We had just done a tour. We were coming home for a month. and Luke was off doing Ringo, and I just thought, you know what I mean? I wanted to do something in my studio, and the idea hit me. Let's answer this. They had done 2 of ours. You know, they had done a version of Rosanna as well, and I thought, let's answer it. You know, so I right away started thinking of what would be, you know, first of all, what would I want to do? Which of their songs? I started listening to a lot of their stuff, and what would I want to do, and what would Joseph be able to pull off? You know, so I was actually leaning towards something else. I forgot what it was. Maybe Beverly Hills. I thought, I was leaning towards Beverly Hills or something like that. But Joseph came in, and we listened to a couple things together, and we decided that Hash Pipe, if we just raised it up a step, if we just moved it up to another key, that would be a good rock and roll one to do.
Didn't you do it in Vancouver first?
I don't know. Did we?
I think you did. I think because we had it, and I remember asking Luke after the show. I texted him, I think, and I said, "Do you want me to like put this up?" He says, "Well, no." And then he got back to me. He says, "What am I thinking about? Everyone's going to put it up," and they did. And I ended up not putting it up, but I think it was Vancouver. That was it was when we got to meet in person, which was really nice.
I just did most of the track in my studio, and then sent it to Shannon in Nashville to put drums on. And when Luke got home, in an afternoon, he was here for maybe an hour and a half, maybe, putting on all the guitars and doing the solo. And
wow. Shannon, you got something?
Yeah. What went through your head the first time the 3 Porcaro brothers toured together with Toto?
We loved it. We had toured together with Boz, had done some shows with Boz together. But with Toto, once Mike came in there, it was, I understood why Mike wasn't in from the beginning, is that, Hungate, David, and Jeff were really this section, you know what I mean, that was, that led to Toto. But I don't know, when Mike came in the band, it just felt right. And it was great. And it was great for my parents, they only had to go to 1 concert a year as opposed to 3 different ones.
I was talking to Luke, I was saying, not having the internet back then, there were rumors flying around from, supposed super Toto fans or super whatever fans, right? Whatever group it was. And you'd get a guy at a party, came up to me one day, he says, David Roberts is going to be the new lead singer of Toto. And I went, really? Because he's in that pocket, the Toto 4 pocket, I'm sure. But or else then I heard Mr. And I went, why would he switch bands? He's in a successful band. No, people don't usually do that, right? But there was, when Bobby left, and before Fergie, were there a bunch of people in line for that? I mean, how did you come to that decision?
Yeah, it was very rough. It was a very rough time.
I mean, how do you follow up your biggest album? That's so strange. But people don't know, these are people, human things happen and crap happens. And sometimes you have to make tough decisions.
Yeah. No, and we had worked really hard to get to that point, to have reached that point. And everyone was kind of fried. Everyone had been, you know what I mean? We'd been burning it at both ends, working on, touring with Toto and all that. And then being home in the studio, whether it was with Toto or Michael Jackson or Don Henley or whoever. And it just was a terrible time. It was a horrible time. I hated seeing Bobby go. I hated seeing our lead singer go. Bobby was very special. He wasn't, you know what I mean, the guy to sing my songs per se, but it still was a very painful thing. And and it was for every lead singer you get, the guy has got to sing all the last, whoever was behind them, they've got to sing their stuff too. And you don't envy that, especially a singer. It's one thing to us musicians are expected to do that, but it's hard for a singer to be able to cover all those bases. But anyway, it was all I can say. It was a very difficult time. And how we came to Fergie, it was, there were a lot of people we were considering, but there maybe should have been more. I don't know.
That was, it took me a long time. I personally, I was such a huge fan. Remember, I got the Steve Porcaro glasses during Toto 4.
Sorry to hear that.
Remember, I put it in the video even. I'm wearing the glasses. There's a picture. But when that happened, because Toto, one thing I did like about Toto, maybe some fans didn't like it, the fact that there was a different vibe on a lot of different albums.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that, as a true music fan, that was kind of a cool thing for me. I'm going, oh, you're taking me on an adventure.
song to song,
Yeah,
hopefully.
song to song.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Did you guys like making those MTV videos back in the 80s, or were they just a pain?
I loathed it. Every
Really?
minute. I hate it.
Really?
I hate it. Yeah. I mean, if anyone's ever been to a film shoot, if you're not directly involved, I mean, it's like watching paint dry. They got to do you know what I mean? They do the general shot, and then they have to relight the 2-shot, and then they have to relight the close-up. It's like watching paint dry. It'd be like watching me working in the studio. Believe me, that's not a spectator sport at all. Making videos, even being in there for one day, I had somewhere better to be. I needed to be back in the studio working on my synths, and the exception being Waiting for Your Love from Toto 4. I think it was the last video we made, and it was just done in some nightclub, and everybody was dancing, and we were up there on stage. That day was a blast. That day was just a big party, and we had a blast. But most of all the other things, spending all that money for just these horrible looking, before there was any kind of affordable CGI and stuff, it just they're unwatchable to me.
How long did it take to do, for instance, Rosanna? Because that was a big production. That was a...
Yeah, that was, a better part of a day, I guess, for us. They would get it all planned to be able to do it real quick for the most part in one day. Now, I don't remember exactly if it was just one day or if that shoot went 2 days. It may have.
I know,
but I remember we were at the sound stage at A&M, in the Chaplin stage, and we were moving along. Kenny Ortega directed it, and it was bam, bam, bam.
I remember
it still was. I never enjoyed the experience.
Well, that seemed like a lot of work. That's all I can say. Shin?
Who's your favorite keyboard player?
Whew. God, there's too many. I'm all over the place. It's I have trouble focusing. My favorite keyboard player right now. Don't put me on the spot like that. My favorite keyboard player is David Page.
There you go. Shen? Good answer. Good answer. That's great. I'm still going to get David Page. I have a lot of them. I know he's very private.
I'm such a fan of him.
I know he's very private. I got to interrupt you. I'm going to get David Page on this channel. Thanks for trying. And he was really nice. He sent me a real nice letter. But David Page will be on this channel. So help me God.
Come on, we'll work on him. We'll work on him. I'll help you with Dave.
Do you keep in touch with the other Toto members?
Yes, of course. I haven't spoken to Luke for a little while, but yeah, I stay in touch with the other members. Paige and I text all the time. Shannon and I are always talking. Lenny's a good personal friend. We go over and eat, break bread together. Yeah, absolutely.
I was 17 when I first listened to Someday, Somehow, and it's my favorite album of all time. Do you consciously write to target an older audience now, or do you write what just comes naturally to you?
I write what comes naturally to me, especially that album, yeah, a lot of the lyrics were, I was helped with Mike Sherwood and sometimes Jamie too, but they were all my babies. You know what I mean? They're all keyboard riffs that I kind of came up with and attached the title to.
What's the meaning behind the video of Africa?
Many have wondered that one.
Because this guy says, I'm having trouble.
I mean, we're all having trouble. It still keeps me up at night what that video is about.
Have you seen all the parodies? There's so many parodies of that video.
So many.
There should be. It's one of the worst videos that mankind ever produced. It's so ridiculous, It's so horrible. What were we thinking?
Yeah, but that's a when in Rome kind of thing. Everyone was doing that. Everyone was doing that.
I guess, but you know what I mean? We were all, like I said, I just wanted to be somewhere else. I wish I would have had the presence of mind to go, okay, so what are we doing today, everybody? And what is this? And when this stuff was being planned a little bit more, Jeff would do that sometimes. Jeff would do that to a certain extent, but the budget such as they were and the technology where it was at then, it just was, you wind up with.
I could have been your body double because I had the glasses. I didn't have the hair, but I could have gotten in. I could have pitch hit. I could have done it for you, man. We didn't know each other back then, but that's okay. what album did you go into, finish the, let's just say you finished the album and you walked away. What album made you think, well, that was a little different? Was there one album that you thought, oh, I'm not sure about this one?
Well, all of them were like that. The positive thing was Toto 4 was, to me, you know, it was the chemistry was right. The tension was just right. The politics of the band was just right. You know what I mean? If I'd always gotten my own way, that wouldn't have been a good thing. And you know what I mean? There's a lot of politics in a band, and getting to get the solo, getting to be able to record my synths without anybody around by myself was a huge, huge deal for me. You know, I was very good at working under pressure, of doing synthesizers on a song with the engineer and producer and the artist there. That's what I did for a living for a real long time. But with Toto, I really wanted to separate what I did, you know, when it was my band, from what I did for a Quincy Jones or David Foster. I wanted to show people the difference. And the only way I was going to be able to do that is if I was left alone. So on that album, they left me alone and let me, you know what I mean, record myself. And the result, I thought, was a really good balance of the band. You know what I mean? The song Rosanna kind of encapsulates Toto for me. And you know what I mean? An iconic drum groove, you know what I mean? Amazing rhythm section playing, amazing guitar solos from Luke, and a synth solo that you don't get from a 3-hour session.
Yeah, you know, I have to agree with you on that one. If I had to say, to me, that's like the quintessential Toto song to me.
Yeah,
I have someone asking, what's the story behind Leah?
What's the story behind Leah? Leah was this old song of mine that I'd had for a long time. And I'd always been kind of working on it. The form, because it's weird because it has kind of 2 bridges, and the form always kind of threw me. But I wound up being very happy with it and very happy with its uniqueness. I had recorded a vocal on it. It was going to be the next Steve Porcaro vocal, and then Joseph came into the band. And I just loved the way, unlike Luke or Paige or Bobby, I love the way Joseph, I could really see Joseph singing my songs. So he did it, and he nailed it. And he didn't, you know what I mean? It would be typical for a singer to really want to put their spin on it. But Joseph Joseph really respected my take on it, and really tried to please me and make me happy, and he sure did.
I've got Chase here, just wanted to come in and say hi.
Hey, Chase, how's it going, man?
Hello.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Real good. You staying safe?
I am, yeah.
Good. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's really good to see you too.
What was your favorite Toto concert?
Well, you know, some of these recent ones have been pretty damn good. See you later.
Yeah.
Some of these recent ones, we just, you know, worked at in London at the Royal Albert Hall. You know, of course, that's always a thrill. But probably in the heyday, you know, when we did Budokan, I think for like 3 nights or something like that, that was a big deal for us. That was, you know, for the Toto 4 tour.
I think I walked into a Woolco or something when the first album was released, and they were playing that it's on the Past and Present DVD where you guys are all singing, and it's on one stage, but on that DVD, I think that it wasn't a DVD back then. It would have been a VHS or whatever they were using. Did you guys do you remember going through the entire album and being filmed? The first album?
Sort of.
I think you did. I remember we were sitting there. We were told to leave.
Oh, really?
But I remember going, they're doing the entire album. Yeah.
It's kind of fuzzy.
Yeah.
It's kind of fuzzy.
You got something, Shan? By the way, sorry, before I forget, sorry, sweetie. You told me you had at least 7 albums in you. We're going to hold you to that.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to what?
We're going to hold you to that.
Come on. Just be patient.
Chase is practicing really hard so he can be your drummer one day.
Come on.
He's a little ways away, though.
Is there a Toto song which was complicated for you to compose and perform?
Yeah. Complicated for me to compose and perform? Sure. All of my songs were complicated for me to perform. You know, they were all kind of complicated to perform. Some of them kind of just fall into place. Taking It Back, you know, I wrote it the night before. You know, I started
Really?
writing the song in the studio while the guys were working in the booth, and Paige was late the next day, and the guys were waiting for David, and I said, I've got something, and we did Taking It Back. So it was, you know, high pressure, but as far as complicated, yeah, the just a very simple song, Bend, which was on a Japanese release, song Bend of mine. I tried to play it and perform it live. It was very complicated.
Yeah.
There's a million people I'd love to jam with. I'd love to jam with Thomas Dolby, Steve Jordan, and Scotty Edwards on bass.
You know, Lenny Zakatek, who sang with the Alan Parsons Project all those years, still wants to play with you.
Does he?
You got, yeah. Lenny's an amazing singer. Next to Eric Wolfson, he sang the most songs for the Alan Parsons. Just sending it out there.
Give me his info.
Yeah,
I'm always looking for singers.
He's a really cool guy, and I think he was sued by Alan Parsons because they were doing a side gig. You know, that's so hard to do when the other people want to do something, but they can't use the name, and then they try to use a variation of the name, and you know, yeah. Alan Parsons was a cool guy. He was an interesting guy.
The guy from that Alan Parsons thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You got some?
Okay.
I got some.
Out of all the Toto songs you've wrote or co-wrote, can you name one or two that's given you the most fulfillment as a musician?
That I wrote a co-wrote? Yeah, sure. Bend has given me the most. I co-wrote that with Mike Sherwood.
Mm-hmm.
I came up with the title. I came up with the concept. I'd been talking to my brother Mike a lot, who was suffering at the time, and he just was being real rigid about certain stuff, and I just kept thinking about Bend and the concept of being flexible and going with the flow and stuff like that. And but Mike filled in all the spaces, did an amazing job.
After the album was released, Michael reached out to me, and because I wasn't familiar with his work, and we communicated a little bit. We were going to do an interview, but we got sidetracked a little bit.
That's too bad. He would have been a great interview. Mike's
Lots
real
of good stuff. But see, just like you and your family, where you're surrounded by with his family too. I mean, there's that picture with him and his brother, with Billy and Sammy Davis Jr.
Unbelievable.
But you had that too, though, right? I mean, were you guys ever starstruck as kids? I mean,
sure, absolutely. Yeah, and by people that most people wouldn't hear of. You know what I mean? I was starstruck by Leon Russell and Larry Knechtel and Joe Osborne and Hal Blaine before most people knew who they were, because these were our heroes: Jim Keltner and Jim Gordon and all the guys in Mad Dogs and Englishmen, and these studio guys were our heroes. So yeah, I'd be starstruck around them.
But with your dad, though, for instance, I mean, when I talk to artists, all their kids always go, well, it's just dad, stuff like that.
Sure.
But
sure.
Was your dad the type of dad that would tell you stories? I mean, you were also there, but would he sit you down and tell you stories about the artists that he's worked with?
Yeah, and my dad was never a big, you know what I mean? There's those guys that anytime they're around somebody, even before there was iPhones and selfies, that, they'd get a picture if they were anywhere near a celebrity. My dad was never that way, really. He didn't fuss over, you know what I'm saying? He'd see all kinds of, believe me, I'd be with him on a movie date and there Clint Eastwood would walk in, that kind of thing happened all the time, But those guys have so many sycophants and people around him telling him how great they are and trying to strike up conversations for not much reason. I don't know. I just have always been shy around celebrities, I guess, and around my heroes.
Well, that's probably helped you, though. I would think that they call that be cool, right? You got to be cool when you're around people.
Yeah, right.
Because if we talked and I'd be going, oh my God, Steve, you're the greatest guy. You go, I got to go have a shower now. Thank you very much. Because I've been around. I've been around a lot of people backstage, and I go, "Don't do that." But they can't help. They're just happy.
Sure.
You're just happy,
And other times there's people I'll be working with, and I'll say, "I'm sorry, but you got to let me piddle on you for a second." I just tell them how amazing they are and how much their music meant to me. I've just been working with Edgar Winter recently. Speaking to him on the phone, and if he had any idea how much I was into him as a kid, he'd be blocking my calls.
Yeah.
But so after you're around him a lot, you know what I mean. You don't have to be like that all the. Hopefully you'll they're just appear and you're working with them. You know what I mean?
Hi, Steve. I love your song "Chase the Rain" from Old Is New. How did that song
You're the
come
one.
about?
I was just in my studio fooling around with everyone always asks that I sing, and I don't know, I was just fooling around with my computer, and I was just trying to do these vocal stacks. I kind of made this little puzzle that I was having the background vocals answer the lead vocal, and it was just kind of this exercise for me I was trying with vocals, and I turned out to really like it. I thought it was really hooky, but it hasn't got much notice, And then I brought it to the band. It was something I could have probably very easily finished by myself, but I put it out there for the band to finish with me, and Luke especially jumped in and got into the verses and stuff. But the chorus and the bridge is all mine.
Just want to say we've got 5 minutes left. So
Great.
People get your questions in. I sound like do I hear 20? Go ahead.
Okay, Steve. From all the Toto albums, which one have you had the most freedom to show your compositions in the keyboards?
Good question.
Lately, I got to say, the guys, it was weird because the Toto 14, I was doing my last season of Justified, and they had to get started with the album before I was done. So I kind of came in halfway through. But I got to say, where, in the past, it was a real struggle to really do what I wanted to do. And a lot of my stuff wasn't working very good. And things weren't working that great and sounding that great, even when it did all work. It was really an effort where, and a lot of the ideas I had would be voted out, or the guys wouldn't be interested, or, it would be, because it would be too much. There was 6 guys in the band and wouldn't be much space in the arrangements for all the ideas I had. But I got to say, lately, the last few things we've been doing in the studio together, Luke and Paige, now they're counting on me to do that Steve Porcaro stuff. They'll go, here in this bridge, this is all you now, do that thing you do. They never used to do that. It was me going off on my own and trying to sell it to them, and now they want that stuff.
Yeah, but don't you have what happened to those songs? What happened to all those songs?
Oh, they were Toto albums. I'm talking about working on the Toto albums.
No, I know, but what happens to songs that you might have brought to the band that the band didn't want to do or didn't fit the album?
Well, I'm talking about, I'm even talking about not so much songs they didn't want to do, but it was more keyboard parts and synth parts on their songs they didn't want me to do.
Right.
It was like a bit much, Steve. You know what I mean? Or too synthy, or too whatever.
Not what's in my head. Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't want it to be that prog or just that synthy.
Well, I like when some people say, Toto had this, they had this, and this. They were also prog, because you had prog moments. And I was very happy about that. I loved it. I just loved it. I was very happy about that. Shan, you got something?
Yeah, quick question. Any tips for someone just starting with digital audio workstations? What to focus on for the best results?
Absolutely. It's only what you need to do. You know what I mean? Are you a singer-songwriter? You just need to record your guitar and vocal, and that's it. Start there. Learn how to do that. Don't take it all on. Don't think that you have to use every single feature these things have, or that you've got to learn all of that. Start off just learning what you need to know to get what you need done. Then you need to add a drum machine to that. Figure that out. But just take it one slow step at a time.
Yeah, good advice for sure.
Steve, I want to thank you for hanging out with us.
Oh, great. That's my pleasure.
Oh, I'm not being cool. Oh,
Thank you. It was so much fun. Nice to see you again.
I look forward to you and I sitting down and doing a track by track of this next album. I really look forward. We're doing a lot of that now, and
Sure.
And they work really well. And I'm giving you 7 months. I've decided. What?
I love being asked questions I know the answer to.
Yeah, that's right. But hey, man, I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for being with us. It's been a hoot. One of my favorites.
Great. Come on, you guys. Let's do it again.
We'll do it again, and take care of yourself.
All right. You too. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
There you go, folks. one of my favorite musicians. I'm going to get rid of this one. I just want to thank everyone for the questions. We have a new format because the reason we were in my studio where I record my radio show, it was really good and it was nice and cozy, but it was a little too cozy. It was too cozy.
Oh, just because it was so tight. So at least
it was just way too tight. So this is where, as you guys, if anyone's watched this channel, would know that this is where I do my interviews. We're working with the lighting. We got Costco lighting over here.
Plus, we get animated. Our arms are just flowing around.
Well, I like the way Steve's always been kind of animated when he talks, and that actually helps. We look at audience. This is interesting. Audience retention for videos of people. People tell me all the time, "Why don't you move around a little bit more?" Because you're kind of, they watch me do these and they go, "How come you don't do your other shows like that?" I'm going, I don't know. I fall into broadcaster guy mode or something like that. So I like the way Steve's animated, and a lot of people have responded to it saying, he's really into it. You can feel it. He's such a musician and he's always moving his body, and I kind of like that. Steve gave our son Chase, you might have seen him when he came in, like 20 minutes, half hour after the Toto show in Vancouver. I mean, he sat him down and he was like one-on-one.
It was such a moment for him.
Yeah,
because it was nice
because that's his pearl kit there. Yeah, that's the pearl kit. I had to look. Why didn't I know that? But he bought a pearl kit because of Jeff Porcaro. And he said that was one of the greatest moments of his life, to sit down and to talk to Jeff's brother, who he was very familiar with his work. We've got some stuff. Maybe they have some people on. Oh, you can do it right there. Anyway, it was really nice. I knew Steve would probably say yes. And he's always been really, really good. Anytime I ask, I text Steve anything. If I have a query or question of anything, he's always right there. Probably one of the classiest guys that I've ever worked with in all these years, and I really appreciate him an awful lot. So it was really nice that he came on.
So we got Steve was great. Another great job from both of you. Thanks, John and Shannon. You can never be too cozy.
You know what? We're always learning cues, because she down here goes like this. When she doesn't have a question, she does this to me. And I'm still trying to learn. We never even talk about this off camera, but she'll go like this. She'll go like, "You're on next," because I'm trying. One of the things we do in broadcasting when I was doing the morning shows, we would go, when there's a silence, get ready to come in. And after a while, you learn each other's cues. You don't have to point because it's radio. You can go like that. You're next. We never did that on the morning show. The whole time I was doing it, we just know each other's nuances, so we knew, and that happens in all morning shows. I do know some morning guys who point and go, "Yeah, that's good. Do that thing there," and they'll have signs for each other, because not all morning shows are taped, and in the beginning, none of them were taped, right? So that's the thing.
Thank you for another great interview. Love Toto. Every guest you've had has been amazing. You're doing a good job, John. Thanks, John and Shannon.
Look up a premiere. Look up a Marcus Eaton. I'll put a link to it. Anyway, Marcus, we released on our sister channel, the one where there are more long forms, track to track. We do a track to track with Marcus Eaton and Invisible Lines. We did that today, and he premiered it on his channel today. Mark my word, that guy's going to be a big artist. And we know we don't do a lot of newer artists. We want to start doing more. It would be nice, as long as you're more open to it. When the hits aren't there, part of us go, well, we kind of still want to do that. We still want to present that artist because we really like the artist. And Marcus is one of my favorites. Look up Marcus Eaton, and even my name was Marcus Eaton, Rock History Music, or just look it up. And we did a track by track. I think it's 11 minutes long. We don't play the whole song because we have to watch with copyright. And again, I have to remind everyone, the reason we don't put songs, and we'd like to, they'd sound so much better, snippets of songs, is because of copyright. Mm-hmm. We can do that with a smaller artist. I've been doing a lot of research in the last few weeks, but it's hard for the big artists. We can't do it. We could lose our channel, and we're almost at 50,000 subscribers. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We put a lot of work into our channel. Shannon's working with us now a lot more. Our son Chase is doing a lot more editing, and we've got another editor out there, and we pay them. We pay our son. Not as much as we should pay him, but he's always on his phone. Bugger. Got anybody saying hi? He's putting on her reading glasses.
I admire Shannon's multitasking, listening to guest and reading questions at the same time. Thank you, Mauro. Yes, sometimes it can be a little challenging. Thanks for having Steve.
Thanks for
You're doing
watching.
great, guys. Love these Friday Night Lives. Thank you. We really enjoy doing them as well.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
We're going to work on lights that don't glare in your eyes. See, that's my mistake.
That would be great.
What usually happens if anybody does YouTube channel, as long as the lights are over there and not in front, you won't get that.
Just so you know, I'm going to leave here tonight seeing dots, splotches of dots from all these lights here.
Oh, I don't know if do you have any wine in the fridge?
No.
No. Shannon, listen to this. A bottle of wine will last Shannon a month and a half.
And usually by then I don't keep it because I just figure it's probably just.
She's never ever.
outdated,
I mean,
so.
she partied when she was young. She was yeah. Shannon did the beauty pageant stuff. I've got a picture upstairs. Got to bring it down for Miss Penticton.
Anyways.
Yeah, she was in Miss Penticton, and she had the really, really big hair.
Mm-hmm.
We can do that, we can drop pictures in and stuff like that on this thing here. Anyway, there's one picture, I swear to God, her hair is like this. It's like really big. I thought she was going to start singing Bad Girls.
Ever hear of Joico Ice Mist? It was like the big.
Is that what you use?
You get like a big helmet head.
Her and her sister. Yeah. And actually, Crystal might be watching tonight. I know my brother's watching. Hi, Charles.
Hi, Crystal.
I think so. Anyway, she's giving me what was that for, honey? Is that because we're finished?
We're done.
We're done. Okay, everybody, thank you.
Thank
Steve
you.
Porcaro, thank you so much. It's strange when Toto 4 came out. Well, Toto 1, I was in high school, and I wasn't in radio yet. Obviously, I was doing the radio club thing at school. And when you're doing that, you don't know if your dreams are going to come true, and some of them work, some of them don't. And to be here in front of you guys and for you supporting us, it means an awful lot to me. I mean, the fact that I've been in radio a lot of years, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything when I did YouTube videos, because I thought, well, I haven't done TV since after high school, and that was cable TV, like Party On, Garth. So that didn't really count. And then I just never thought I'd be able to do this, and to be able to do it in front of camera and to relearn what I thought I knew and I didn't know. So I'm rambling, but thank you very much. It means an awful lot to me that you and for Shannon and for Chase, who now is learning a lot about music. I mean, he can play every Led Zeppelin song, and a lot of Toto, and a lot of Rush. But he's learning about the background of the music. He just worked on Dan McCafferty of Nazareth. He just cut that up. He cut up the zombies, and he's listening to me interview these people. But more than listening to me, he's listening to them, and he's learning. He says, wow, they're the guy, and he'll go and listen to the music. And so, that's what we did, right? All of us who are involved in this call right now, we did all that kind of stuff. We'd hear something before the internet. We'd try to learn as much as we could, and we felt like we knew the artist a little bit. And in some ways we did, right? So on that note, Shannon taught me once there was a finish button. Okay, where is it, Shanny? There was a finish broadcast button. Where is it? It's gone.
It's right up there in the corner.
The finish button.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, God.
Appreciate your time.
You guys are awesome. And production. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, bye.